It is a great honor and a privilege to introduce Miriam Meisels Griver. We're here in your beautiful home in Hanof. And Miriam, you have the most unbelievable story.
Thank you.
And I'm so grateful to be in your home, and Miriam being a president of Hadassah Israel as well, and a survivor, and
the dear of Israel, Yakirat Yerushalayim.
That's so worthy. But Miriam, if you could tell us a little bit about your just unbelievable family and your roots.
I'd love to tell you about it. This is my great-great-grandfather. I'm the 6th generation from Rabbi Dov Berish Meisels. Rabbi Dov Berish Meisels was the chief rabbi of Krakow and of Warsaw. And when he was the chief rabbi of Warsaw, he was also the representative of the Polish people in the Austro-Hungarian parliament. And at that time, the Polish people wanted to be independent, and they fought the Russians. And of course, Rabbi Meisels was a part of the government, and he was for Poland. And he also had a bank together with another person, and they gave money to the Polish people to fight the Russians. So when President Alexander Kashnayevsky came to Israel to speak in the Israeli parliament, he mentioned my great-grandfather, and he said that from then on, the Polish people always loved the Jews, and they were very proud to have Jewish people in their land. And he spoke greatly about my great-grandfather. My grandfather, which was the father of my father, his name was Shimon Yosef Meisels, and he passed away just as the Germans entered Hungary. And my grandmother, I'll show you the picture. My grandmother was taken to Auschwitz, that's my grandfather, and my grandmother was taken to Auschwitz, and of course my father was already in Auschwitz when my grandmother's train came into Auschwitz, and she came with her children. She had 8 children, and 5 of them were saved, and the 3 of her daughters and she herself went into the crematorium, and my father knew their date of death because he saw them going into the crematorium. He was already in Auschwitz. He saw them going into the crematorium, and he saw the smoke come up from the crematorium after they went inside the crematorium. So that's the end of these people, but thank God 5 of them got saved, and of course we had great relationship with them. From my mother's side, this is my mother when she was young. That's her aunt, and that's the picture of in Budapest. Her aunt got married in Budapest, and my mother family came to Budapest toward the end, toward the middle of the 18th century, when the emancipation opened up in Budapest. This is a picture of my grandmother, from my mother's mother and my grandfather on their wedding day. Because they lived in Budapest, all of the family from my mother's side lived in Budapest, and they became a very great family. My grandmother had 11 children, and they all became young adults, and they all married. And unfortunately, after the war, only about 2 of my mother's cousins stayed alive. The rest of them were all gone.
Miriam, you have a picture, original picture of your mother and her brother.
Yeah. This is a picture of my mother when she was young and her brother. Unfortunately, her brother was a great Zionist, and he was a courier for one of the Zionist groups to save Jews, and they saved a lot of Jews. And one day he was caught by the Nilash, by the brown shirts in Budapest.
It's the Arrow Cross.
The Arrow Cross. And they took him. They didn't kill him in Budapest. They took him to Ukraine, and they killed him in Ukraine. And for years we were looking for him until finally the Jewish center in Budapest found out that he was taken from Budapest to Ukraine, and there he was killed. My mother and my sister and myself, we were saved. We were in a house that had the yellow star, and so we were under the influence of the Germans. We only could go out in certain times to go and look for food. It was like a ghetto, but it was a little bit easier than a ghetto because you could go out sometimes. And I remember that one day we went out to look for food, and a priest came to my mother, and he said, "After you take food, come to me." And my mother was with 2 little girls. She said, "I can't run away with the little girls, so I'm going to go to him," but she didn't know what he wanted. And so when she came to him, he said, "Here, I'm giving you a certificate that you are I'm leaving your name and I'm leaving your birth date. I'm just giving you that you were born in a different city, and you can use this as a certificate that you are not Jewish. You are from now on a Christian, but you have the same name." And her name in Hungarian was Piroshka, which is a proper Hungarian name. So she didn't have to change her name, and he gave her this certificate. She never used this certificate, but I think that after we were in the house, from there they took us into the ghetto.
You just have a picture of you with your sister before.
This is my mother, and the baby is me, and here's my sister Yehudit, and she was 14 months older than I am, and unfortunately she passed away 2 years ago.
And you have another picture also before.
And this is also a picture with my mother, with my sister Yehudit, and myself, Miriam.
And Miriam, you also have an amazing picture of your parents' wedding.
Yeah. Okay. Here are my parents. Here's my father. My father was a rabbi in his profession, and he also had an antique store. And when all the rules and the regulations of the Germans were in Hungary, then of course the government sent a person to my father, and that person came to my father and he said, from now on I am your partner in your business. And he took my father's shop, and he threw my father out of the shop and did not give him a penny for the shop. And so we didn't have any more income. After a while, when the Germans took over Czechoslovakia, lots of Jews from Czechoslovakia came to Budapest because they understood that Horthy and his government are not going to send the Jews from Budapest to Auschwitz. They didn't know where they were sending them, but they knew that those people that were sent in cattle cars don't come back. So they came to Czechoslovakia, and it was a complete. The government announced that the Jews are not allowed to help the Czechoslovakian Jews that came to Budapest, and whoever helped them was shot. But my parents couldn't just leave them, and they hid some families in our basement in Budapest, and mainly they hid children. And those children were after a while always taken away, and eventually they joined the transport of the children that came to England. And
the kinder transport.
The kinder transport, and they were saved, but one, and for years I couldn't talk about it, but one Jew probably wanted to save himself, and he told on my father that he's keeping Jews and Czechoslovakian Jews and children in our basement. So they came and they took my father and they sent him to the army, and they sent him to pick out mines. But how did he come about it? Because they said in the beginning, okay, we are taking you to prison and we are going to shoot you, because you went against the law of the country. But my mother, because they were for such a long time in Budapest, and they knew the government, so my mother went to Horthy, asked him not to kill my father. And he said, okay, I won't kill him, but I'll send him to the army. And that's what he did. And because he was already marked as a person not a good person, that he went against the law, he was one of the first people that were sent from Hungary to Auschwitz. And that's what happened to him. To us, after he was sent to Auschwitz, we were sent into the Budapest ghetto. My mother, my grandmother, my aunt, and my sister and myself were sent into the ghetto. And we were in the ghetto of next to the Kozinci, next to the big temple of Kozinci, and the Jewish center was above on the top, and Eichmann was looking down from the top to see what's happening in the ghetto. Of course, he took over the whole Jewish center, the whole area, and he was sitting there looking down into our ghetto, and but almost right in the beginning, they started to take out people every day from the ghetto and send them on the trains to Auschwitz. And so my mother knew that my father is somewhere, and he was sent on the train, and she didn't hear from him for a very long time, and that wasn't my father. She was expecting a letter every day, but she never got it. So she understood that where they are sending the people is not in a good place. So we were hiding in a cellar in the ghetto, and those cellars were very, very cold, because in those days there were no refrigerators, so they put their apples and potatoes and everything in the very cold cellars so they would keep fresh, and that's where we were. And not only we found it, but a lot of people found it, and it wasn't a big place. We only could sit, and I sat on my grandmother's lap, my sister sat on my mother's lap, and we never could stretch out for the night, or we could stand up sometimes, but we could never stretch out for the night, and we were sitting there all the time in that cold place, and my feet froze, and my mother thought that I'll never be able to walk again. So one day, the Nilash, the brown shirts found us, and was screaming and yelling and pointing the big guns at the people and shouting, "Get out of there! Get out of there!" And we all went out. My mother took me in her hands because I couldn't walk, and they told everybody to put their hands up, and my sister did not put her hand up. So one of them pointed the gunshot at my sister to kill her because she didn't put up her hands. She was 4 years old, 4.5, 5 years old, and she didn't put her hands up, and he pointed the gun at her. And my grandmother saw it, and she said, "Oh, he's a very nice man. He's not going to do anything to you, and he's going to take the gun, and he's not going to point at you. Put your hands up." And she put her hands up, and somehow, miracle, he did not kill her, and let her be. And at that time, my mother was marked, and they told her that tomorrow she has to take a suitcase and stand by the gate and go out, and she'll go on the train. And that night she didn't know what to do with us. She said, "If I take my children with me, for sure we are all going to be killed. If I don't take them with me, eventually the ghetto is going to be with no people, and eventually everybody will go on the train, or they'll kill them in the ghetto." So she did not know what to do with us, but she wanted to save us. And eventually she came up with an idea. She took us at night. She took 2 pillows, and she put the pillows on our faces, and she took out the garbage, and she put us inside. The garbage wasn't taken out for 3 months, so she put us inside the garbage, and she put the pillows on us, and she told us not to cry, not to talk, and stay there until she comes back and gets us. Don't get out of there until I come and I take you out of there. And of course, we cried and we fell asleep, and I have no idea how long it took for my mother to come back, but she came back. When she was near the trains, she decided she's not going on the train, and she has to go and save her children. So what she did, she threw down her suitcase and she started to run. When the Germans and the Nilash, the SS and the Nilash saw her running, they shot after her, they screamed after her, but she continued to run until she didn't hear any more shots and no noise, and she was somewhere. I have no idea where she was, and I have no idea when she came back to the ghetto. Now this ghetto was a closed ghetto. You could not go out or come in without the permission of the person that guarded. Either the SS guarded it, or most of the time the brown shirts guarded it.
The Arrow Cross.
The Arrow Cross. And she came there, and they let her in. She was a blonde lady, and I think, I thought about it many, many times. I didn't know how she managed to come into the ghetto, but I think that was the only time she used the certificate, the birth certificate of the priest, and she showed that she's a Hungarian, and they let her into the ghetto, which is fine. That's one thing. But then she came to the garbage, and she took us out of the garbage. And now she had to take us out of the ghetto, because the ghetto weren't anymore a lot of people there, and they took everybody to the train. And the train, we know, went to Auschwitz. And I have no idea how my mother, and she was always my savior, and I always looked up at her thinking and at her imagination that she had. And she was a young lady, and she was a very, very spoiled person, and yet she was full of wisdom. And I have no idea how in the world she came in by herself, and now she has 2 little children to take out, and they let her take us out. I have no idea how she did it. She never talked about it. When after the war, my father looked for us, and he sent an emissary to Hungary, because my father vowed that he'll never come back to Hungary, because he said that the Arrow shirts were worse than the SS, and he vowed he'll never go back to Hungary. So he sent an emissary from Germany to Budapest, and he told them where we used to live, where my grandmother used to live, and he should look for us and tell them that he's alive and he's in Germany, and he wants us to come to Germany. That young man found us, but unfortunately his wife and children died in the ghetto out of starvation, and so he did not have them. When he came to my mother, because after the war everybody wrote their names on the Jewish center and said, we live here and here, if you are from my family, and they wrote the names of the families. If you are, please come and see us. And everybody wrote their names, and that's where that young man found my mother's name. And he came to us and he told my mother, your husband is alive and he's in Germany and he wants you to come. My mother didn't believe him. He thought that young man is, he doesn't know what he's talking about. But to make sure that he is alive and he is in Germany, she left us with my grandmother, and she went to Germany by herself. And when she saw him, she told us later, his face looked the same, but his body wasn't the same. And my father was in Auschwitz for over 9 months, because he was one of the first ones to go from Budapest to Auschwitz on the first train. And from there he was on the march of the death from Auschwitz to Germany, and he came in Germany to Flossenburg. There he was three days, and from Flossenburg they marched him to Poking, which was an Air Force base. And besides that, it was an Air Force base, it was a death place. Lots of not only Jews died there, also prisoners of Russia and Hungary and from everywhere were there, and they all died out of starvation and out of hard work. It was an Air Force base, and because it was an Air Force base, the Americans, when they came, they flew over the Air Force base and they shot down the planes of the Germans, but they made holes in the ground. So for the Germans to go up with the airplanes again the following day, they took all the people and they had to cover their holes so the airplanes could go up in the air. But eventually my father just collapsed, and they thought that he was dead, and they threw him on a pile of dead people. Luckily for him, the Americans came into the Poking Waldstadt camp, and the first thing that they saw when they came into, and it was the first time in their lives that they saw a pile of dead people, some of them on the bottom already rotting, and my father was on the top. And luckily, most of the people, if you can see the picture, are with their face down. And luckily, my father was with his face up. But he was from 80 pounds that he went to Auschwitz. When he came out in Germany, he was 32 pounds. He was completely emaciated. And he couldn't talk anymore, and but he was alive, and he blinked his eyes, and he was hoping somebody would notice that he's blinking his eyes and would save him. And luckily, one of the soldiers, who was a Jewish soldier, and his name was Sidney Schachmeister, and he said, "Look at him, he's blinking with his eyes. Let's go and take him to the hospital. We have to save him." And that's how my father was saved from the Germans. And this is a picture much later from Sidney Schachmeister. This is Sidney, and he got married. He went back to America after he was a soldier, and of course my father and him corresponded all their lives. And Sidney Schachmeister, after he married and had 2 daughters, they always came to visit us. Once a year they came to us and visited us, and they were very great friends. Once my father went to the States to visit him, but they always came to us. So this is the story of my father.
It's a real miracle. It's an incredible miracle.
It is an absolute miracle. And once he was in Poking, he asked my mother and us to come. So when my mother went to him and saw him, she understood that what he wants to do. He said to her, I'm appointed by the Americans to be the head of the camp, and I would like to rehabilitate the people that come out of all those horrible camps. I'd like to rehabilitate them and to build a huge monument for the people of this place that were killed here, and of all the places that they were killed in Germany, and I want to build a monument for the Holocaust. So that's what he did. And in 1945, he started to build. Already in 1946, he started to build a monument, and Adenauer, who was the head of the party that later became the head party and was the president of Germany. He helped my father build the monument. He sent us all the big, huge stones that were on the bottom, and the other stones my father bought all over the place. But that's what he built, and he built it, and it was dedicated in 1947. And these are the original pictures of the monument. And here you see the people who came and were at the dedication of the monument. Here is my father speaking about why that monument is built. And he told them, I built this monument to be here forever, so people do not forget that Germany did the Holocaust, and we have to remember the Holocaust for always. And it's still standing there in Germany, and we came to dedicate it later again. This is the march to the memorial, to the obelisk that my father built. And here you see here's my father, here's a representative of the German government, and this is a representative of the American government, and this is Dr. Philipp Auerbach, who was appointed by the Germans to help and rehabilitate the people, the Jews in Germany, in the DP camps in Germany. And he was a friend of my father, and he came to the dedication of the monument. Here is from the camp, the children that were in the camp, and bringing flowers to the dedication of the document, of the obelisk. Okay, here. My father, because he was a rabbi, he married most of the people in the camp. after the amazing part was that these people came out of horrible concentration camps, and they were walking the streets and they didn't know where to go. And eventually a lot of them ended up in our camp. Our camp started with about 300 people who stayed alive from the war. And slowly but surely, in 1947, we already were in 8,000 in the camp. 8,000 people that came out from all over the camps, and after they tried to go back to Poland, and they had pogroms in Poland, they came back to Germany to go to be with the Jewish people and to be rehabilitated. And that's where they got rehabilitated, in the camps. And it was absolutely amazing. Those were amazing people. I remember them coming into the camp, and then getting help in the camp from UNRWA, from the JDC, from Ort came from Israel, and people came from Israel. Ben Gurion sent them to come and help the people. It was absolutely amazing, but the most amazing thing was that the people themselves helped themselves, and they wanted to be humans again, because up to now they weren't even called in their names. They had either numbers and they were called in numbers, and now they got back their names and they called each other in their names, and that was very important. And every day I remember there was a Jewish paper put out, not only in our camp but in the other camps, and the main page that they read was the page of people that wrote their names in there, so people can find them. And they all told them, this is my name and this is where I am. If you know me, if you are part of my family, come to me or get in correspondence with me. And that was the main page that the people read every day. That was the first thing that they took, and they took the paper. But those camps had much more than that. Those camps were rehabilitating young adults. They came from Israel, all the from the kibbutzim and from the moshavim and from everywhere. They were sent from Israel to train the young people, to speak to them Hebrew, and eventually so they would want to make Aliyah. And lots of people came from Israel, and one day Ben Gurion showed up, and he of course said to the people that he wants them in Israel, but he didn't really. He had his doubts about Israel, about the people in the camps, if they could be rehabilitated or not. But eventually, most of the people chose to come to Israel, and the camps in Israel, in Germany, had lots of great rabbis that were saved from the Holocaust. They had the rabbis from Hungary. They had the rabbis from Poland, and they made a little yeshiva for the children that were saved. The emissaries that came from Israel opened up schools in Hebrew, and they taught them Hebrew, and they taught them health, and that was very important, and children were very proud that they got their first
like a certificate.
certificates, that they are very good children and they are doing very well, and they were very proud of it, and so that what was going on in the camp. And in the camp they also had a theater, and I remember I took a group of people to Germany after in 2023, and I mentioned that they had a theater, and I showed a picture of the theater, of the people, and one of the women says, "Oh, that's my mother," and she was in that show in the camp, which was absolutely amazing. She just couldn't believe it, and so we had concerts, and we had the living was like everywhere, but the most important part was that people taught people their crafts, and they taught them to be a shoemaker, to be a tailor, to be a pottery person, and I should have a picture of the pottery that they did in the camp, and they gave my father the first one that they took out of the oven, and it was a Seder plate with all the signs of the Seder, and it was said on top, it said in Pocking Wollstadt, from Pocking Wollstadt to our friend, and we had it for years, and we always put it out on the Seder. When we had a Seder, we always put it out, and we always told the story of the camp and who we got it from. And then after we used it, we gave it to my brother, and my brother still has it, and he puts it on his table every Pesach, and he shows it, and he tells it to the people, to the friends that he brings to the Seder. And
Miriam, you have a wonderful picture of a wedding that your father officiated.
Okay. My father, because he was a rabbi, he officiated in most of the weddings, which was amazing. That people were just hungry for love, to hug each other, to call each other in names, and there were lots of weddings. And in the year 47, 48, there was they took to see how many births there were in Germany, and they found out that in the DP camps there were the most babies born, more than in any city in Germany, and that was something very lovely. But unfortunately, in our camp, we had a nurse, a German nurse, and we saw babies dying. And that was a we didn't know why the babies died. I mean, some babies died naturally because the mother didn't have the vitamins, and some babies were born with their spine open. But some babies were just fine, and all of a sudden it died. And we didn't know why so many babies died. Eventually, it was found out that the German nurse pressed the baby on top of his head, and that's how he died. So my father had to make a grave for the babies, and my father turned her in to the government, and she was punished, and she was put in prison, and I know that a friend of mine, she was born in Germany, but her mother, because she heard that babies are dying, she did not give birth in the camp. She went to Passau to give birth to her child because she was afraid that her baby would die. So my friend wrote a book about it, and her name is Gina Reutemann, and she bought a book about it, and she made a movie about it. And that was a very sad story. And my father made a Jewish cemetery behind the obelisk, and eventually in 2005 we all came to dedicate the children's grave, and I'm looking for the picture of the child. Here it is. This is the monument that we put on in 2005 for the children's grave, and it says there the Jewish children that died in the camp.
It's so tragic. It's such a tragedy.
Yeah, terrible. So this was one part. Now here I have a picture which is absolutely amazing. The first thing my father did when he got better and he was appointed as the head of Poking, he buried the Jewish people that died in the camp. He took each corpse and put it in a separate
grave,
in a box. First in a box, and then in front of the monument, he put the graves. He made that kosher for Jewish graves, and he put the graves in there. And it's amazing. I don't know how, but a lot of them he knew their names, and he put their names on it, which is an absolutely amazing. That after he was in Auschwitz, he was on the march of death. He remembered and he wrote down the names of the people that passed away there, and he put their names on, those that he knew, and here I'll show you some pictures of the grave. Here he asked the Americans to give him Germans so they should know what they did to the Jewish people. And here is the coffins that my father put them in, and then he put them in front of the monument. And he wrote it in the Jewish paper, which was all over Germany and Austria, and some families came and took those coffins and buried them wherever they wanted. But all those that remained in Poking, they were taken to a city next to Poking, near Regensburg, and there was a Jewish cemetery which still is there till nowadays, and some of those people are buried there. And of course my father made a prayer for them, And we have a picture where they talk about it, and they where's that picture? They talk about it, and they there was a cantor, Mordechai Stern, who was the cantor, and he made the prayers over the people. You don't have the picture of the. Okay, but anyway, okay. So we'll skip it. Maybe we'll find it later. This picture we showed, right?
And here's another picture of.
No, that's not. That's a non-Jewish picture. Oh, here it is. You see, here is my father, and here is the cantor, and other people who made prayers over the people that from the mass graves into the coffins, and they buried them in a Jewish burial way. Now, I told you that there were Russians and Hungarians and from all the world, also people there. And my father, who was persecuted by all those people, he had the respect for them too. And they were put in a pile of the non-Jewish people, and my father called a priest, and he told them, you make a prayer for them and you bury your people. And this is a picture where the Christians, and here are the American soldiers, the Christian American soldiers burying the Christians that died in the same camp. And that was my father's work. Can you imagine?
It's such incredible respect.
Unbelievable. I mean, I'm still amazed till nowadays how in the world he had the strength and had the humanity of doing it. And it was amazing. And that's how most of the people felt. Most of the people wanted them. Here is a picture of how they took them out from the and put them in the coffins. How they took them out from the pile, put them each separately, and from there they put them in the boxes, in the coffins, and buried them.
To show such respect.
Unbelievable. These are the Jewish bones, and my father asked the Americans, give me Germans, SS Germans, Nazi Germans. They should take them out and they should put them so they should know what they did. And that's how it was.
Miriam, you have a very interesting story of somebody who wrote about this whole story. She wrote a book.
Yeah, I'll tell you about it. Here, you see where the green grass is? That's where they were buried. And from there, they were either taken away by families or put in the Jewish gravesite next to Regensburg. And this is the priest still doing the prayers for the non-Jews. This is a wedding in Germany, and that my father made the wedding, and my mother usually baked for the wedding, and as many times we were the flower girls at the wedding. And I'll show you a picture.
I think you're in the picture at the bottom.
I'm here. I'm here at the bottom of the picture, right? I'm here at the bottom of the picture, but I should have a picture where my sister and myself are at the wedding, and here is the priest that made the prayers over the bodies of the non-Jews. And this is the picture that my father, my cousin, and another rabbi from nearby, and an American soldier, and they made for the Jewish people, for the Jews to be buried. All right.
And Miriam, you have recollections of being in the DP camp?
That's what I'm talking about.
I know, but you have vivid recollections.
I have recollections since I'm 2.5 years old. The YouTube that you saw, that was the first time I talked about the Holocaust. And it just came out of me. I didn't know. I mean, they asked me to come and help me. I said, I don't know what I know about the Holocaust. I don't know, because my mother didn't let us talk about it. Once we came to Jerusalem, we were in the Ma'abara in Rehovot, and not for a long time. And my father took us out from there after 2 weeks, because my mother was already in the 9 months, and he didn't want her to give birth over there. So he took us out to Tel Aviv, and my brother was born in Tel Aviv, and after that my father couldn't stand the weather in Tel Aviv or in Rehovot, so he came to Yerushalayim. He said, "Chevre, we are going to live in Yerushalayim. I can bear the weather in Yerushalayim," because we came in the summertime. We came in May, and my mother set us down. We weren't in our apartment yet. We were in a hotel, and my mother set us down. My father too, and she said, "The life we had, I never want to hear about. We are born today. From now on is our history." And she never talked about the Holocaust. She didn't let my father talk about it. She didn't ask us talk about it. We never had a book of the Holocaust in the house. We never mentioned it, that word, in the house. And that's how I grew up.
And you and your sister, did you speak with each other about...
No. We weren't allowed. We didn't. And I went through school, and I had wonderful friends, and they knew that there was something different in our house, but they never mentioned it, and that they really didn't know that I'm a Holocaust survivor. I went through the Hadassah. I was the president of Hadassah. They didn't know that I'm a Holocaust survivor. I was a teacher. They didn't know that I was a Holocaust survivor. And only when they asked me, "Come and help us," I said to myself, okay, I'm a Holocaust survivor. What do I know? What do I remember? So I took a photographer, and I said to him, just take a photo, see what I come up with. And that's the result.
But that was only recently. That was not so long ago.
It was in 2005, 2007, something like that. Till then, I never talked about it.
And with your children? And your husband?
He knew, but he never talked about it.
And your parents, their friends, they didn't associate with other survivors?
Yes, they did. but not when my mother was there. She didn't mind them talking, but she did not talk to them. After she passed away, I talked to they have friends, and I asked her, did she ever talk and tell you how she took us out of the ghetto? I have that whole, I don't know, I have no idea. They said no, she never talked about it.
And Miriam, do you have any recollections when she put you in the bin, in the dustbin?
Yeah.
And they covered you with the cushion?
Yeah. Who else would tell it? My sister took it out of her mind completely.
And she never spoke to her family either?
Not now. My father, after my mother passed away, talked a little bit to her son. And my father talked to her son after my mother passed away, not before. Before, he never talked about it. And he gave him pictures from the Holocaust, from after the Holocaust.
Did your father have a number on his arm?
Yeah, it was 10490 or something like that. I have it written down.
And Miriam, can I ask, how did you get this picture and that your father wrote on the picture?
No, my father, the Schachmeister gave him this picture. He took this picture and he wrote it, the Schachmeister's handwriting.
May 1945.
Yeah. He wrote it in 1945.
And Miriam, you have some amazing pictures when you were in the DP camp.
Yeah.
But even speaking about the DP camp, you never spoke about the DP camp as well? But those were more positive days. Those were more...
Yeah.
Those were incredible.
No.
That was revival.
No. But my mother told us very specifically that we were born the minute we came to Israel. We went, there was nothing before.
So, Miriam, could you show some of the pictures, because they are really very special as well?
Okay, I will. Okay. Are we on? Okay. Okay. Our lives in the DP camp was an unusual life, because in our house we lived in the house of the mayor of Poking. The Americans threw him out. They put him in the house where his worker used to live, where his house, the woman that cleaned his house used to live, and they put him there, and they gave him the house. They gave us, my father, the house of the mayor, and my father made an office on one side, a synagogue on the other side, and down was the big, huge kitchen, and upstairs, we lived upstairs. The bedrooms were upstairs. And all the people from all over the world who had anything to do with the DP camps came to my father in our house. And my father never said, you shouldn't come into the office. We heard what's going on in the office. We heard what's going on in the kitchen. And when they went, we lived a little bit outside the DP camp. And when my father went into the DP camp with my mother, he took us. And that's how we got to know all the people in the DP camps. And they were very nice. They were just lovely. They were hugging and kissing, and we really enjoyed it. And not my mother, but my father was so protective of my sister and myself, because he never thought that he would see us again. And he was so protective that what he did, he didn't send us to the DP camp to study, but he sent us across the street from our house. There was a church, and he sent us to the church to study because he didn't want us far away from him. And the sisters in the church, when they thought about Christianity, they sent my sister out and myself out to play. And we came back, and many times she said, "You guys know more about the Christian studies than the Christians know." And but my father was so protective over us. Even when we came to Jerusalem, he wanted us home on a certain day, on a certain hour, and he wanted to see us. He was very protective, and my parents went to the DP camp to talk to people and see everything is okay, they always took us with them. So we knew what's going on in the DP camps, and it really was amazing how they lived and each helped out each other. And it really was amazing. And so here are some pictures, not really in the DP camp. That was in front of our house. Here's my sister Yehudit, and here's me, and that's my mother. And I think we have a picture, which I don't see either, of how we arrived in Germany. And how we arrived in Germany, my father, of course, he told everybody that my wife and my children are coming. And of course he came to see us, and he knew which train we took, and he came to see us. He waited by the train station. And when we came out of the train, not only did we see my father, but we saw hundreds of people from the DP camp who came to greet us. Because to see a whole family unite after the war was amazing. I mean, how many people...
So rare.
How many people reunited with their whole family? They all were cheering. They all were crying from happiness. They still looked. Some of them looked very thin. Some of them were still with their stomachs because when you don't eat, your stomach blows up. And it was, I always say, it was like a scenery from Dante. It was absolutely amazing. And so they adopted us. The whole camp adopted us because and we gave them hope that maybe some of their families are still alive and they will see them. So that was an amazing thing.
And Miriam, can I ask, how was the encounter with your father?
It was difficult. We recognized him because my mother showed us pictures of him all the time after the war. And she talked about him after the war, before we came to Germany. But when we saw him, he was a stranger, and it took time for us to really talk to each other and really understand each other. It was a time, it was some time that we really felt about him like a father. And
but eventually,
the initial
meeting must have been very emotional.
Yes, very, yes. It was very special, and especially in front of the people. we hugged and we kissed, but not much. But then we went home, and everybody went to their place, and we sat down and we talked. But it took some time to get used to. Yeah. So this is in front of the house that we were, and we have another picture with on Shavuot. Here it is. Here on Shavuot, they decorated the entrance to the synagogue and to the office, and we have. Where's the picture that we have in the office and in the synagogue? We don't have the picture of the office and the synagogue. Mm-hmm. Oh, here. Here's the picture from the office, and here's my father. This is Reinstein, and my father married him with a girl they were both in the camp, and they fell in love. And here's Yitzchak Golombek, and my father married him with his wife, Machusha, and the three of us came more or less at the same time to Israel. Now, that he's Reinstein, and he went to Canada from Germany. My father married him in Germany, and he went with his wife to Canada. And he also, I don't know why I forget his name. Probably I wasn't that connected to him, but I was very much connected to the three of these. And he also went to Canada. And my father married him also in Poking. And they all have, the ones in here, I know their children. I'm in touch once in a while with their children and with their grandchildren. And my father married not only their parents, but also their children. He married here in Israel. And his son came with me to Poking to see and learn what happened to him in Poking, and so that's nice. And here is another. This is about a year before we came to Israel. This is in Poking. About a year before we came to Israel. We came to Israel in 1949 on Yom HaAtzmaut. We came with a plane from Venice. We went from Germany to Venice, and from Venice we took a plane to Israel. And we arrived in Israel on Yom HaAtzmaut 1949, the first Yom HaAtzmaut. And when we came out of the plane, we looked like little Eskimos, because in those days the planes didn't take much, you couldn't take much suitcases and much things on the plane, because they were propeller planes. And it took them 10 hours, it took us 10 hours to go from Venice to Israel, which nowadays takes 4 hours. And when we came out, the plane they opened up the doors, and the heat and the sun was so strong, and we were all dressed with a lot of clothing. And there were photographers taking pictures of us, and my father had them for years. And when I looked for it after my father passed away, I couldn't find them. But I really should go to the main library and see whether they have the pictures.
And this is still such beautiful pictures that you do have.
Yeah, and this is about. It was taken about the same time, I think. Here I was 6 years old, and the first time that I got a doll was when I was 6 years old. My sister didn't want to, she was a little older, she didn't want really to play with it anymore, but she did. And that was the doll and the buggy that I got when I was 6 years old. Usually, that was the doll in the buggy that I got when I was 6 years old for my birthday. But usually, children get it when they are 3 years old. But unfortunately, I never had a childhood. I was always from the beginning that I know myself, I was a very responsible person, and I felt myself very old. I was 8 years old when I came to Israel, but this was taken about a year ahead of time because we had to pass through things, and things went very slowly. You had to ask for permission to come to Israel. You had to ask for all kinds of documents, and so this picture was taken I was about seven and a half.
That's your passport picture?
It's my passport picture, yes.
And Miriam, do you remember in 48 when the state was declared?
Of course, that was an amazing. We all were, of course, listening to the radio to see. And once Israel was announced, there was an amazing quiet. And after there was an amazing quiet, there was laughter and crying and singing and all emotions broke through in the camp, and it was really an amazing scenery, and of course we were all happy, and most of the people, and at that time the DP camps started to close in 48. In 49, most of the DP camps were closed. There were only a few of them open. Our DP camp officially closed at 49, but really officially in 1950, because there were a few people who remained there, and in 1950 everybody was out. So the DP camps mostly closed, and one DP camp I remember closed in 47. I remember that Anna Rasmus, who I'm going to tell you a little bit about her, she was a young child after the war. She was in high school, and like in every school, the teacher said, "Tell me what you did. Write a story of your vacation. What did you do in your vacation?" And what she did in her vacation, she went into the library. She went into the where the official documents are. And she started to ask questions. What happened to the Jewish people that lived in Poking? I mean, there was a chocolate factory that belonged to a Jew. There were all kinds of Jews with all kinds of that they had official. There were dentists. There were lawyers. There were. They had all kinds of businesses, and she said, "What happened to the people? Where are the Jews? What happened to them?" And so she wrote a story, and she read it in the class, and the teacher was very annoyed at her, and she said, "This is not what I wanted," and she was very angry at her, and she was nasty to her, and she gave that to the principal, what she wrote, and so they called her mother in to the school. Why is she doing it? What does she want? And somehow it got into the paper, and it got into the French paper. And she was called to come and speak in France. And so they couldn't cover it up anymore, because it was now open in France, so they couldn't cover it up. But the German called her the nasty girl, because that's how they looked at her. And but she continued with her, whatever she did, and eventually she married one of her teachers that was very sympathetic to what she did, and but the community never forgave her, and the community was very nasty to her. They told the mother, "Why don't you send her away from here? We don't want her here. We don't want your family here." And so the husband couldn't take it, so they divorced. And she took the two children and she went to Washington. And in the meantime, she wrote where's the book? Here it is. In the meantime, she wrote a book about what happened in Germany, and one of the chapters, of the main chapters about it, was about my father. The whole end of this book is about my father.
And that's with a picture of your father after the death march.
Yeah, she found it in the archives. This picture is in the German archives, and she found it in the archives, and she put it in the book, and she read about my father, how he came to Germany on the March of the Death, and he was almost on his death in Germany, and then how he was saved, and what he did in Germany, how he rehabilitated the Jewish people in Germany. And when she finished to write, every time she went and she talked about this book to groups of Jewish people, she always asked all over Europe, and then in the States, she always asked. She always ended her speech with, "Do you know Rabbi Meisels? Do you know Rabbi Yehuda Lipot Meisels? I'm looking for him because I want him to read the story I wrote about him." And every time she got a no, and she was already, she didn't know what to do. And she wrote to Yad Vashem, and Yad Vashem knew my father, and they didn't connect. And then she was invited to Houston, Texas. And in Houston, Texas, she finished her words with the same thing. "Do you know Rabbi Yehuda Lipot Meisels?" And Sidney Schachmeister lived in Houston, and he read it. He didn't hear her speech. She opened the Holocaust Museum in Houston, and he wasn't there, but he read about her in the paper in the following day. And so he called up the Jewish Center, and he said, "Where is Anna Rasmus? I want to talk to her. I know Yehuda Lipot Meisels." So they said, "She's already in the airport. She's flying out." And so they said, "We are going to call her. stay on the phone. And they called her and they said, we just got a call from Sidney Schachmeister that he knows Yehuda Meisels very well. They are friends. So she said she dropped everything and she came back to Houston and she met Sidney Schachmeister. And he told her about my father. So she said, how can I get in touch with him? I want to get in touch with him. I want to send him the script, the manuscript that I'm going to put in the book. And so he told her that Miriam, his daughter, lives in Dallas, Texas. So she said, can I have her phone number? And he gave her my phone number and she called me right away. And she said, you know, I wrote the manuscript about your father, what he did here in the DP camp. And I'd like to send it to him. And so can you give me please your father's phone number? I said, of course I can, and he'll be happy to talk to you. And so I gave her the phone number, and she called my father, and my father said, yes, of course you can. And she said that I'll try and come and see you, and but first I'll send you my manuscript, and I want you to, if there is any corrections, please do it. And then I'll come and visit you. And so my father said that would be very nice. And so he sent her the manuscript, and he read the manuscript. He made some notes on the manuscript, and he put it in an envelope. And he went to the post. He went first to the synagogue in the morning, and from the synagogue he went to the post office. And he sent it to her, and then he came home, and he had a worker in the house, and he sat down, and the worker said, I'm going out for lunch, and I'll be back. And my father said, I'll leave the door open, and I'm going to rest on my chair. And he closed his eyes, and he passed away.
Miriam, it's like a whole circle. The closure of a circle.
That's a full circle, and she got the manuscript, and she came to the house, and my father had lots of papers from Poking, and she went through them, and she went through the pictures, and she came to Israel, but unfortunately he wasn't there anymore. But then Yad Vashem invited her another time, and she came to Yad Vashem, and she came with her mother, and they stayed in my house, and we became very good friends.
Sure, Miriam, I just have to tell you, there are no words to thank you.
You're very welcome.
Your life and your story is just unbelievable. Miriam, you really are truly an icon. You are somebody we should all strive to emulate. You are amazing. No, really, Miriam, but your story and the unbelievable strength of your parents, and the resilience, and the renewal.
Yes, and that's the resilience that I want to pass on to the next generation.
That's what I want to ask. What message do you give to the next generation?
The message that they can really learn a lot from the Holocaust survivors. They can learn resilience. They can learn how to be nice to people, even under the most horrible situation. They have to go and learn from Judaism and go in the right path. And that's what the Holocaust survivors did. And every time I speak to Holocaust survivors, I always thank them for building Israel, because they built the moshavim, they built kibbutzim, they built the streets, they were doctors, they were lawyers, they were airplane pilots. They did everything for the establishment of Israel. When we came to Israel, we were 600,000 Holocaust survivors that came to Israel. In Israel at the time lived 600,000 Israelis. Many of them came from different countries, but they came when they were very young. And our children, that lots of them were the last person from the whole family, that the only one lived. They came to Israel to fight in Israel. They came to fight, and some of them were not even registered in their names, and they sent them out to fight. They sent the children from the kibbutz with song and dance and all the best wishes. Our children came here, and they hardly got any send off. They just, some of them got some revolvers, some of them got some weapons, but some of them just fought with their hands. But they knew what they were fighting for. They were fighting for Israel, so we can live here in peace and quiet.
Hey, Miriam, I am so eternally grateful to you, and thank you so much.
You're very
and
welcome.
You should just have Mazel Brocha, maybe stream.
Amen.
But thank you, from the bottom of my heart, I am so grateful.
Thank you.